Welcome everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We do have people coming in, but we're gonna go ahead and get started because we only have an hour today, so we do want to make the most of our time. My name is Kinza Khan. I am an attorney, and I do primarily family law. So not necessarily fully immigration. I am one of the fellows, one of the consultants at Muslim Civic Coalition now. We've taken out Illinois from our name. And I'm also the vice president of Muslim Bar Association. This event is being co-hosted, co-organized by Muslim Civic Coalition and Muslim Bar Association. Today, we have some information about Muslim Civic Coalition on the screen, and we will be providing links and resources later today in the chat about both organizations. We will go 1 hour today. The first half will be a presentation by Attorney Farisa Khan. Thank you so much for being here. In the second half, we're going to have open Q&A from anyone who was on the call. So you are able to submit questions in the chat. You are able to wait until the second half and ask questions by unmuting yourself. And you're also able to send questions privately to the host. So please send them to me. I'm going to be moderating the questions as they come in. If you feel like sending it anonymously or privately, please feel free to send it to me. And that's an option you have. All right, so Attorney Farisa Khan is a Chicago attorney at Dreyfus Law Group who focuses her practice on estate planning, Islamic estate planning, and health law. She's passionate about helping the Muslim community grow and navigate their way between secular and Islamic law. Recently, she's emphasized in her work in helping clients safeguard their assets, protect their children, and understand their rights. As a weekend school teacher to young children, she appreciates the opportunities to help people learn something that they can benefit from. Farisa graduated with her JD from Loyola Law. And in law school, she was president of the National Muslim Law Student Association and hosted several national conferences. She received her Bachelor of Science in Neuroscience from UIC in 2021. So thank you, Farisa, for joining us. We also have Saida Safia Quadri, who will be helping answer the questions in the second half. Saida Safia Quadri goes by her middle name, Safia. She's the owner of Quadri Law Group. She's an immigration lawyer who has been practicing law for about 12 years. She obtained her bachelor's from UIC as well, and her law degree from John Marshall Law School, which is now called UIC Law School. And she was also born and raised in Chicago. And so to start, if everyone who's on the call feels comfortable, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can say your name, what organization you're representing, if you're representing any organization, where you're calling in from, what neighborhood of Chicago or what suburb of the Chicagoland area, or what part of Illinois. And then we're going to get started. If Lena, you can stop sharing your screen, we're going to start. Farisa will start her presentation. In the meantime, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Farisa.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Farisa. I'm an attorney at Dreyfus Law Group. We're going to briefly just be going over a lot of what our rights are when it comes to ICE and immigration, and then also how everyone can plan ahead, whether it's in your workplace or in your own personal life. So a little bit about what's happening right now. Everyone's kind of already aware, but immigration enforcement is an all-time high right now, especially in Chicago, despite Chicago being what's coined as a sanctuary city. People are being stopped by ICE, questioned, and detained as well. So currently, the highest risk people are undocumented people, people working without any work authorization, asylum seekers, and anyone residing in the United States for less than 2 years. That is also undocumented. Specifically for DACA, because I know that's a huge concern for a lot of people. If you already have DACA, you're okay. You can still renew your DACA application. USCIS will go through it; they'll renew it. However, no new applications are being processed right now. So you can still go ahead and work with your immigration officer to submit a new application, but they're not going to be processed or accepted. So two sort of main federal changes. The first is expedited removal. Most likely this is going to be contested because it's a little bit of a, it's not something that it's not something that's gonna run very long, but essentially anyone who lives in the US for less than 2 years and does not have any documentation, they can get deported immediately without a hearing. That's what's happening right now. This likely will be contested, but right now that's what's happening. So one of the important things is that if you are traveling anywhere outside of your home, make sure you have proof of your residency in the US for more than 2 years. So whether that's a driver's license that's dated back for more than 2 years, a home lease, anything that can prove that you've been here for more than the 2 years. This way, at least you're guaranteed a hearing. The other thing is this list of locations that I have on under raid locations. These places used to not be places that ICE could come in and raid or detain people or question people, but now they are open. So schools, places of worship like mosques, churches, etc., any shelters, medical facilities, hospitals, daycare centers, courthouses, workplaces, all of these are essentially free now for ICE to come in. So not everyone is familiar with the types of agents that are around. I know the CPD is probably the most common that people see. One of the main things that you want to do when you're stopped by any officer of any kind is ask them to identify themselves. It's as simple as saying, what department are you from? And ask to see their badge. So the Chicago Police Department, or any police department for that matter, will have a badge that looks similar to this. It'll specifically say police. An ICE officer's badge will say ICE. And the reason this distinction is really important is because there are certain things that police is authorized to do and certain things that immigration officers are authorized to do, and there isn't much of an overlap. Also, if you see anyone wearing a police vest, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily a police officer. A lot of ICE agents do show up in police vests as well. So it's always important to ask what department they're from and ask to see their badges if you can. So now the distinction: police officers can ask you to identify yourself by your name and address in a public space. They can pull you over for traffic violations. They can search your vehicle without a warrant if they have any probable cause. They can ask you to present your license, insurance, and vehicle registration at any time that they pull you over. And they can also arrest you for any criminal activities. However, they cannot ask you about your immigration status. They can't ask you what your place of birth is. They cannot arrest you for anything immigration related. It can only be criminal. They cannot enter your home without a warrant, and they cannot assist ICE with any immigration matters under the Illinois Trust Act. So the only way that you'll ever see police officers with ICE is if they're coming for anyone for a criminal and immigration reason, but never just immigration alone. ICE agents, on the other hand, can detain you for immigration issues. They can enter public spaces without a warrant, but not private places. And they can conduct I-9 audits in your workplace with a 3-day notice. Without a 3-day notice, they cannot conduct any audits. They cannot enter your home without a warrant. They cannot pull you over while you're driving for any reason. They cannot compel you to answer any of their questions, including your name. And they can't enter any private spaces without a warrant. So the main thing to focus on is that all people of the United States, irrespective of their immigration status, have basic rights under the US Constitution. And those 3 rights that everyone should remember to use at all times is the right to remain silent, the right to be safe in your home, and the right to an attorney. Remember these because these are your 3 basic rights and they're afforded to everybody. So now we're going to transition a little bit into talking about what to do in specific scenarios. So generally, it's really important to carry your ID and any immigration document that you may have, if you have any, like your work authorization or your green card. If you don't have any documentation, make sure you carry the proof of your US residency for more than 2 years. Always invoke your right to remain silent. Always invoke your right to speak to an attorney, and always ask an agent to identify themselves if you're approached by one. Don't carry false documents. Don't lie to any agents. Don't speak to any agents more than necessary. All of these things can get you in serious trouble beyond detention and deportation. Don't sign any documents, especially if you don't understand them. You always have the right to remain silent. Ask for your attorney to go over those documents before you sign anything. Don't discuss your status with anyone other than your attorney, and don't drive without your license. If ICE shows up at your home, the first thing you want to do, make sure you do not open the door. at any cost. Ask them to identify themselves. Again, make sure you see their badge. Make sure they identify themselves as whatever agent that they are. Invoke your right to remain silent. You do not have to answer any of their questions. And then ask for a warrant. The warrant can be held up to a window, a peephole, or slid under the door. But without that warrant, they're not entering. If for whatever reason they do force their way in, record everything. Record their badge number, record their vehicle number, record everything that's happening. And we'll talk about the distinctions in terms of what to look for in a warrant in a bit, but the most important thing is to make sure that you ask for that warrant before they make their way in. If they show up at your workplace, so any public space that's part of your workplace is a place that ICE can enter, but they can't enter any of the private parts of a public workplace. So for example, if you work in a restaurant, they can't enter like a kitchen or an office, but they can enter the main seating area if they want to. Invoke your right to remain silent, ask for a warrant, and do not run. Because if you run, it could be seen as an admissibility of guilt of some sort. One of the main things to have in all workplaces is an ICE response team. So this could be a group of anyone from 1 to however many people that are responsible for greeting the agents. They're going to ask for the warrant. They're going to inspect the warrant to make sure that it's actually valid. They'll respond accordingly. They'll call the attorney, any attorney or an in-house attorney if they have one, call a hotline if applicable, and then notify the emergency contacts of any employees that may have been detained by ICE at the workplace. Another thing to note, your ICE response team ideally should be people that are not concerned about ICE themselves. So moving on to warrants, because that's something that you're going to have to ask them for if they try to enter any private space. So right off the bat, any judicial warrant is going to have the U.S. District Court written at the top. It's going to have district of whatever district you're in, but you want to look for that right off the bat. If it doesn't have that, it's not a judicial warrant. Without a judicial warrant, they cannot enter. Depending on the warrant, the name or address of the people that they're looking for should be in this area. So if it's your home, it should have your home address and your name or the name of the person that they're going after. If it's your workplace, it should have your workplace address. On the right-hand side, the order should say why the warrant was issued. And then towards the bottom, you want to make sure that it's signed by a judge. If it's signed by an immigration officer, it is not a valid judicial warrant. And you also want to make sure that the date is recent. So if the date is from like 2 months ago or 6 months ago, it's not going to be valid. This is a sample like non-binding ICE warrant. So if you see at the bottom here, it'll say that it's signature of authorized immigration officer. That's not sufficient for them to come into your home or come into your private workplace area. These orders are essentially just intended to authorize ICE agents to detain people suspected of breaking immigration laws, but they cannot allow ICE agents to enter a private space of any kind. Okay, so if after all this you do end up getting detained by ICE, make sure you memorize a phone number that you can call from jail. Make sure you invoke your right to remain silent and ask to speak with your attorney. Don't answer any questions without an attorney. Don't lie about anything. Don't sign anything. And don't share your legal status with your cellmates. A lot of those people could very well be informants. In terms of bond, so if you were detained by a police officer for any criminal court reasons, there's no more cash bond required to be released. So the judge is basically just going to decide if you can be released or not. And if you miss your court date, they'll have a warrant out for your arrest. On the other hand, in immigration court, currently the bond is set around $5,000 and it has to be paid in full by a U.S. citizen that is not a convicted felon. The bond is refundable, but if you miss your court date, there's going to be an order for immediate removal. If you think that someone you know may be detained by ICE, this is the website that you go to. You put in their information, their name, their date of birth, and their place of birth, or their A number and their place of birth in order to find them. Okay, so the main chunk is the preventative measures that you can take ahead of time. So step one is to have an emergency plan. Make sure you talk with your family and every single family member knows exactly what to do in the event that anyone is detained. Memorize phone numbers of 3 family members or friends. These are people that you can contact if you are detained. You want to carry a list of important phone numbers, or at least have that list somewhere accessible. So the legal guardian of your children, family members, your lawyer, your religious leader, your school, your children's school and or teacher, your landlord, doctor, things like that. Have all of your documents in a safe place. So you want to have all identification documents, all your medical documents, as well as all documents related to your property, your real estate, and your finances. Specifically for your children, you need to make sure that you have a guardian in place for your children if you're detained. Make sure that your child's emergency contact in school is updated with the contact information of the guardian, because in the event that you are detained, you want to make sure that someone's available that can not only pick up your child from school, but also be their temporary guardian. You also want to make sure that you create a list of important information for your kids. So medical issues, allergies, special needs, doctor number, babysitter information, something like their favorite toy if they're not going to be at home, all of their identifying information and their school information as well. So the second thing is to create your guardianship forms, and this is specifically if you have young children. So there's two types of guardianship forms. The first one is short-term and the second is standby. So a short-term guardianship form is valid from the point you're detained until you're able to care for your children again, but it only lasts until 364 days, only less than a year. It does not take away your parental rights. You still have those rights, and the rights of the guardian under that short-term guardianship are very limited. The standby, on the other hand, is for longer than 1 year. It's also valid from the point you're detained until you're able to care for them again. The guardian has more decision-making authority at this point, but the parental rights still remain. And then your third step would be to create a property power of attorney. So you're going to delegate a person in charge of all your property if you get detained or deported. The way it sort of works is you can have person A in charge if you get deported. If person A is not available, then person B. If person B is not available, then person C. This person has the authority to manage, sell, pay, and handle all of your financial property, which includes your cars, your real estate, business, LLCs, bank accounts, retirement accounts, etc. And it's valid from the moment you're detained until you're ready to return, or if you revoke it fully in writing. So where I work at, specifically at Dreyfus Law Group, we do offer these services same day. So essentially you call our office and schedule a time to come in, complete an intake form with an attorney who's going to then draft these forms for you. The forms will be printed, notarized, witnessed, and signed at the office, and all forms are going to be sent home with you. The entire process would take less than an hour from start to finish. But it is available same day for anyone that's looking for urgent assistance in that matter. So contact information is right there, which I will also add in the chat. But this is for anyone that wants to create that property power of attorney as well as the guardianship forms. For any immigration help, you can contact Dreyfus Law Group or any other law firm. If you want to find some immigration attorneys, the Chicago Muslim Bar Association is a great resource for that. Any legal and immigration organizations that are out there, like Illinois Coalition for Immigration and Refugee Rights. And then Kinza will also put in a handout for a list of low-cost immigration services. There is an eligibility requirement, but she'll put that, I think she already put that in there. So that handout is for anyone that qualifies for low-income services. And then we also have a list of sources that you can find on the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition page. They have a bunch of immigration resources, step-by-step plans, and more of know your rights type information that's out there. But that is the end of mine, so we can open it up to Q&A.
Thank you so much, Farisa. We're going to have Safia Quadri. I know you're on the call somewhere. Feel free to share your video if you would like. And Safia, if you can introduce yourself a little bit. We already introduced you in the beginning of the call, but for anyone who came in a little bit later, Safia is an immigration lawyer. I've worked with her in the past on cases, and she's awesome. So thank you so much for being here, Safia. Feel free to unmute and introduce yourself whenever you're ready. And then in the meantime, if everyone can put any questions in the chat, we already got a couple. And then you can also email or message privately if you want. You can send messages with your questions to me in the chat as well, or you can just ask in the main chat, or you can unmute and just ask out loud. Oh, Farisa, in the meantime, there's another question about the financial services that are available at Dreyfus Law Group. I think that's about your law group.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we do the power of attorney and guardianship forms. We also do comprehensive estate planning as well for anyone that's interested, both Islamic estate planning, and secular estate planning. I'm gonna put the website in the chat, so that should have like a list of the comprehensive services that we offer.
Thank you. How long have you been there at Dreyfus?
I've been here for, I would say, about 4 months now, or about to be roughly.
Awesome. And that's the phone number for the office?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Safia, is your audio working?
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I don't know what happened. There was like a glitch right at the last minute. Okay, have the questions been answered?
There's a question for you, which is, what is the new rule by USCIS on the registration? Who needs to register for the same? It might be draft circulation yet, not sure if it's rule yet.
Right. So a couple of things. When it comes to registering, if we're talking about like the new talks we've been hearing about registering, I think those are still to come out. And then the process of how to do it is also yet to come out. So there's not exact guidance that we can provide for you on that right now. But one thing you should know is that if you have a pending application, depending on where your application is pending, you should update your address and your telephone number, your contact information through that application. So if you have a work authorization application pending, then you go to USCIS, you'll update your information there. Same with asylum, naturalization applications, green card applications. If you are in court proceedings, then you should be updating your address with the court, but also with ICE. It gets a little tricky with ICE if you're just updating your address, you're fine. But if you have a check-in, you should definitely consult with your attorney before checking in, especially if it's in-person check-ins. If you have online check-ins or email or ISAP, then there's a little less risk there, so you can go ahead and check in. But anything that's in person dealing with ICE, then you should consult with your attorney before doing so.
Thank you. I have another question for both you and for Farisa Khan. So Ramadan is coming up, and we're going to be at places of worship, possibly like community centers, maybe for iftars or masajid or whatever it may be. Do the same rules that you mentioned apply if ICE officers knock on the doors of these masajid and of these larger community centers that's not your private home?
Farisa, if you want, you can go ahead and answer
Yeah.
that, since you just did the whole presentation on it.
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, I think the main thing to take away from the entire presentation, obviously, is your right to remain silent, your right to ask for an attorney at any time. Technically, because places of worship are open and can be considered public spaces as of right now, the Immigration Coalition is saying that, you know, ICE is able to enter. What might be helpful for a lot of masjids to have is some sort of a, you know, again, an ICE response team. So someone that can greet the ICE agents, ask them who they're looking for. And, you know, instead of having people sort of barge in, it'll be more of a structured approach. But again, for individuals, it's the same thing. You have a right to remain silent. You have a right to ask for an attorney. You have the right to ask the agent to identify themselves. And for your, I mean, if they try to detain you, they should have a warrant for your arrest.
I'm just going to add just a little bit to that. As Farisa said, I think masajids should have an ICE response team. And with that ICE response team, if ICE does come in through your doors, then you want someone that's designated, or like a group of people that are with ICE at all times, so that they're not just free to walk around and roam around and ask questions, or like to start approaching. And then as a part of that response, you can also try to have them not disrupt what's happening at the moment. So if prayer is happening, then there's a way that the ICE response team can talk to ICE and be like, well, this is what's happening. You're free to come in, but you're not free to disrupt what's happening or disrupt the prayers that are happening at this time.
Thank you. If anyone has any more questions, please put them in the chat, or you can ask out loud as well. We have both attorneys here. And in the meantime, I also saw that Darakshan Raja is on the call. Hi, Darakshan. Feel free to introduce yourself. Darakshan is the person I mentioned earlier to you all when I was talking about Muslims for Just Futures. I'm going to repost, for anyone who missed it, I'm going to repost the link to the interest form. And go ahead, Darakshan, and you can explain a little bit about MJF, about the organization, about the interest form and all of that.
Thank you so much, Kinza. I so appreciate you and everything and all the great work that you do. And thank you so much all for holding this important conversation. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founding executive director of Muslims for Just Futures. We're a national grassroots organization that builds power through organizing, advocacy, and movement building. I'd say probably in the last 6 months, we have started to also build out a legal network, partially because of the fact that so much of the attacks our communities are facing is straight up lawfare. And so having a values-aligned movement attorneys within the Muslim or the broader BMMSA community is really, really invaluable to us, especially because we have a national membership and senior organizers across 4 states who are Muslim, right, and are sort of dealing with both the war on terror infrastructure, but also have been active around Palestine. We are prioritizing our senior organizing fellows in Chicago, are putting together an immigrant protection working group. And so I'm happy to drop it in the chat, but we made a post, our members who really want to create something specific to immigration, primarily because we've had community members whose family members are have been picked up by ICE, and the hell that they are navigating right now in terms of even just getting information on where the person is being detained. As you all know, because Chicago is sanctuary and Illinois is sanctuary, folks are being picked up and then taken to either Kentucky or to other parts of the country to being held. And so there's been just a lot of panic, concern, and even when there are attorneys present, sometimes the legal advice is not the best advice. And so we really thought about, let's actually go ahead and make a specific working group. I'll drop it in the chat. Again, we welcome anybody who wants to join it. I also wanted to drop another link because I had a feeling that this might be a legal heavy, lawyer heavy space, is that Bina Ahmed, who is our general counsel, has actually been working to develop a national legal network. And so we're particularly right now looking for movement attorneys or movement aligned attorneys. We know that March 21st is when the timeline is up for actually announcing the countries that would potentially be on the ban. And so we want to really build up this network prior to that dropping so that we have attorneys we can turn to for both legal analysis, directories, who do we turn to. So I'm going to drop both of the links in the particular chat for y'all. And then of course on our website, we also have a legal resources piece, which has tons of KYRs. We just dropped one yesterday on denaturalization, because again, a lot of our community members were concerned about denaturalization. So I'll drop it in the chat, also drop my information on my email. If any of you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. But thank you so much, Kinza. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Darakshan. We also have more MJF, I think it's of Atlanta, right? Representing here. So thank you all for being here. Are there any questions for Darakshan or about Muslim for Just Futures before we move on? So we do have a question for the immigration attorneys here. So regarding the masjid note, Nicole's question is, you know, we've heard guidance that if mosques have private property signs at the masjid, then such triggers, this would trigger a need for a warrant. Is that true? Do you know anything about confirming that?
I'm not too familiar. If someone else wants to chime in, they can. It's my understanding that churches and masjids are open to the public. And so in which case, if they do come in and, you know, I mean, everyone has hours of operation. And so they would be subject to that the same way patrons are subject to that. But I'm not familiar. And then again, that doesn't mean that that's not true or that it is true. I'm just not familiar with that.
Yeah, based on what we've been seeing right now, generally most churches, masjids, etc., are held by organizations and could be considered private. But for the purposes of for ICE, because like Safia said, they are public spaces and they are open to the general public, it's a little bit of a gray line. But again, best practice, like we said, is to have that response team ask for a warrant. That always sort of sets them off. Have that conversation with them that you need a warrant, and create those fine lines that there is a prayer going on, so you're going to need to wait until it's over, or something along those lines.
Thank you, that's helpful. Yeah, my understanding also is that, a sign may or may not be sufficient. The other issue is once someone is already inside, I know that like when someone is already inside, then whatever they see becomes fair game, basically. So that's why they say like, don't fully open the door. Anything that they see, any person they see, they could now know that that person was there or those items were there. And then basically they have access this way to whatever they see. So don't open the door fully. That's why some of the advice is like, open the door slightly and come outside and talk outside with, to the person, to the ICE officer or whatever, so that they're not coming into your home or they're not, so the same thing I think would go for a mosque or public place. The thing is when they're already inside, then that's a little bit harder to.
Yeah, we treat them very similar to businesses, because obviously like restaurants, for example, privately owned, private spaces in a sense, but for example, the area that public can come in and have a seat and order, that's considered a public space. So technically ICE does have the authority to come in there, but they wouldn't be able to go into any of like the back offices or any place that a normal community member or member of the public would be able to come in. So for a masjid, like specifically to enter the office, that is restricted to, regular masjid goers, that would require a warrant. But technically, since it is considered a public space, we can't prevent them from entering.
Thank you. Are there other questions that anyone has? Feel free to unmute, feel free to ask it out loud or in the chat as well. Any issues that people have seen come up in their communities or, with anyone they work with in recent months, or recent weeks because of all this ICE stuff that y'all want to kind of share?
I mean, I can speak, from the law firm perspective. A lot of the clients that we did see coming in, which is why we even started this program, the ICE response program, to give same-day guardianship and power of attorney forms, is because a lot of our clients who are coming in for real estate services or for estate planning services are now concerned naturally that if they were to get detained for any reason, that they need to have that power of attorney for someone to be able to manage their assets or manage their childcare. And a lot of people are afraid, and a lot of people are coming in, and that's why we've switched to like a 1 hour, like you can come in, you don't have to worry about making an appointment, you just come in and we'll get it done. But on the broader spectrum, I think it's always important generally to have similar estate plan documents in place, especially if you have young children. You want to make sure there's always an appointed guardian in case something happens to you, immigration or otherwise. But I think obviously there's a lot of fear, and a lot of people are taking the steps to safeguard their assets and protect their children, but a lot of people are too afraid to do that as well. So I think one of the biggest things is also pushing these organizations and firms and that are here to help people in a safe manner approach and navigate this entire situation.
And one thing I'll add is that if you don't have status, or if you know someone that doesn't have status, or if you have a prior deportation order or anything like that, then definitely consult with an attorney. Even if you feel as if there is no relief available for you or there's no applications available for you, it's better to talk to an attorney because there are some nuances that are not discussed here that might be relevant to you. You know, for instance, if someone has a prior deportation order and they're facing deportation, but they also have a fear of going back to their home country, those are things that they should know about what to do. Okay, now I have a fear with a prior deportation order. What should I do? And again, this is probably not the best place to discuss it. So if you have a situation like that, then talking to an attorney specifically about you will help you know, okay, in your particular situation, what are things you should know when you encounter ICE, or if you're getting detained, or if you're about to be deported. I mean, there's so many other examples I can bring up, but it's so case specific that it's better to at least talk to an attorney and see what there is for you or what you should know particularly.
If not, we could give some parting advice from both of you, from Safia, from yourself regarding immigration law, and parting advice that you have for everyone, and from you as well, Farisa, and then we could, you know, end the call in a few minutes. Oh, sorry, someone did send me a private message, but it's a specific case. So I'm gonna have them reach out to, I'm gonna have them reach out directly to Safia, to you, since it's an immigration case. But yeah, go ahead with any parting advice you have for all.
Okay, so I mean, parting advice is that, as crazy as everything sounds, let's stay calm, because we survived 4 years of the Trump administration before, and we'll be able to do it again. There's already like reassurances that we see, as so many of his executive orders are being blocked in the courts. I mean, just recently he was trying to block refugees from coming in, but that was now blocked by the court. And so there is hope that the checks and balances of our country will play the part that they're supposed to play to protect our due process rights and everyone else's due process rights. If you are in this country without status, you still have due process rights. And I know Farisa really emphasized this through her presentation, but you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. You don't have the right for an attorney to be provided to you at the expense of the government, but you still have the right to an attorney. So when you're dealing with ICE, being respectful, being not escalating the situation is very important, but at the same time, it's asserting your right to remain silent, asserting your right to contact your family, to contact your attorney. And if you are a family member, then know that there are resources out there. So if your family member does get detained, there are ways to try to locate them. There is the ICE online detainee locator, but there's also, like, if you just reach out to an attorney, then there are ways that you can try to locate your loved one. So, you know, just be calm, and that there are ways to try to address everything that's happening. And of course, consult with an immigration attorney.
I echo everything that Safia said. I agree. Don't be afraid. You do have the ability to assert your rights, so make sure you do that whenever you're faced with an officer of any kind. I also think it's important to plan ahead, even if it's not with an attorney and it's just with yourself, just having a list of important numbers, important documents. And this should just be a best practice for everyone, because you never know what's going to end up happening. So you want to make sure that you're always prepared and one step ahead of everything that's going on. But remember, you always have the right to remain silent. You always have the right to have an attorney, always have the right to ask an officer to identify themselves. And most importantly, if you're not concerned about ICE specifically, there are many, many people that you may not know in your community that are concerned. So just letting them know even these few basic things will go a long way.
Yeah, thank you both for that advice. I agree with that. I think there's, right now, the good thing about social media is that there's so many like know your rights snippets and things like that online. I know that Muslims for Just features on their website also has a lot of like posters in different languages as well that y'all can share with communities as well. And it's really cool because it kind of gives like a visual, and like you could even paste it by the door for organizations or community centers in which, you know, there are a lot of immigrants. And that way someone can just like look at it right there. It's almost like a cheat sheet for when, if and when ICE comes to the door, you have kind of the information right in front of you. We don't have to memorize everything. So it's awesome that, you know, we have resources in our community. We have people who are willing to share the resources. And so the Rafshan just put the flyers in the chat, and those are the posters in 10 languages. And then Ali, yeah, that is those are the posters. So you guys thought great minds think alike. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Please keep in touch and keep an eye out for future Know Your Rights presentations. They're not all going to be about immigration and ICE, but they will be about whatever's going on that we need to know about. And please do get involved in whatever capacity that you have. So we have many, many different ways to get involved and to help out. And a lot of those were shared in the chat as well. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. And we're gonna let everyone, we're gonna turn it off in a couple minutes if no one has anything else, so that we could all get ready for our next moving on with our day.